We've got 35 million clients of iShares around the world. I'd like that number to be 100 million, and I think there's opportunity.
Are we live? Hello. Hello. Are we live?
35 million clients of iShares around the world.
Yes.
I'd like that 100 million.
Okay. Hello, everybody. How is everyone doing? This is a bit of an impromptu stream. Turns out that the pedo in chief, the child botherer, the most popularly elected president of all time, has come to my little shithole of a country. So he's probably going to give some gay and cringe speech about how transgenderism is the way for peace in Northern Ireland to progress. Probably moan about like how Irish he is or something else that's cringe and gay. So I figured might as well stream it, get some content out of it, probably get angry and spurg out about it. So let's have a look, chat. If I play if I just put up the BBC on stream, are they going to strike me? Am I going to get strike? Or am I going to... Let me have a look, see if... Is this the only live stream that's really going? Ooh, for me. Yeah. I think the BBC is the only live stream that's really going, so I don't know if they're going to strike me or not, so we're just going to rip off BBC. Might as well get something back from the license fee. Let's have a look.
As Caroline perhaps predicted wisely, he maybe will ad-lib because we haven't really heard anything from him yet, and we're going to get Joe Biden unleashed very shortly.
Okay, Mark, more from you a little later in the programme, but for now, thanks very much. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it, Caroline? We've heard a lot over the last couple of days in particular about the fact that the president can be accident-prone, and it's so difficult.
So, how many people have we got? This is kind of off the cuff. No, probably not. 16, am I reading that right? No. 2... Oh wow, there is. That's not too bad for completely off the cuff. So, for people who are not aware, there's a big anniversary that passed on Friday, the 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement brought, quote unquote, an end to the conflict in Northern Ireland between Northern Irish Unionists who wish to maintain the union with the United Kingdom and Irish nationalist Republicans who want to, quote unquote, reunify, although they were never really united, but reunify with the Irish Republic. There was a referendum and a treaty signed 25 years ago because our media and pretty much all media just is toadying for the Americans. They keep trying to make out like the Americans were essential to this, and that Bill Clinton like personally signed it, and the latest cope that they're making out is that Joe Biden is like the great peacemaker or something. So the Americans swoop in despite the fact that they kind of propagated and prolonged the conflict to try and pull out the credit, saying that they ended it. Joe Biden has come over. He's only here for like 17 hours before he goes down south to LARP as an Irish person. He decided to grace us with his presence in our capital city called Belfast, tell us about how he saved us all from being horrible sectarian people killing each other and not having enough transgenders in society and all that good Catholic stuff that he's into. So he's coming to give us a speech in Ulster University, which is kind of says it all. I doubt there's many people who would have gone to UU in my chat and community. Don't want to sound elitist. I went to university in England, so I was kind of exempt from this, but there's two universities in Northern Ireland. There's Queen's University, which is an internationally renowned university. It's quite good. And then there's the University of Ulster. and the old joke was that you went to the University of Ulster if you got the custard bus to Clogged House, which is like the Spad School. It's like a polytechnic with ideas ahead of itself. So the fact he's going to like the second-rate university kind of says it all, and it's the only event that he's doing in Northern Ireland. So his entire like trip is just being a complete damp squib. Everyone seems to hate him outside of like the really wanky centrist liberal types, the Alliance, the SDLP, some elements of the UUP. Everyone else seems to like hate him. Well, apart from Sinn Féin as well, because they're their own things. Loyalists and unionists tend to really hate him because he constantly goes on about like his 48th twice removed 19th generation Irish grandfather, and how that makes him really Irish, and how he's in touch with Irish people, and how he feels for Ireland, and he needs to be really invested in everything that happens in Ireland, and how he really doesn't like the British because of that. And it's like, yeah, pretty fucking cringe. So unionists and loyalists really don't like him. And then on the flip side, for a gay reason, you have Irish Republicans like Ógra Sinn Féin, like distant Republican types who don't like him because he's not like pro-diversity enough, and he's not nice enough to Palestinians. So you've got, I know I'm kind of showing my politics here, but this is why I never talk about politics, about where I'm from. But you've got the kind of based reasons from like the unionist communities, and then on the opposite side, you've got the kind of cringe reasons from the cringe Irish Republican and nationalist community. The main political parties in Northern Ireland, one of the major ones, the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, which is the largest unionist party, they actually collapsed the local government here last year because of the way Brexit was handled, because now there is an internal economic border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of being in the Union and undermines our place within the United Kingdom. So as part of their policy towards that, they pulled down the government, because here we have a thing called mandatory coalition, because we killed each other for like 30 years over stupid reasons. You have to they all have to be in government with each other. There's not like a real opposition outside of like the TUV. So they pulled down the assembly. Oh, is he coming in? Is the pedophile coming in? No, these are just journalists who are pedos and of themselves. So that caused the collapse of Stormont, our local devolved administration. So the original idea seems to be that Joe Biden would have come to Northern Ireland and swanned about and given a big address to Stormont and told us how good we are and how brilliant our democracy is, and how this is, just great for peace and stability, and how the American people help bring tranquility to the island of Ireland, and like, oh my god, it's so great, just all that kind of gay shit. Base DUP playing 4D chess pulled down the Stormont, so now he can't do that. So instead, it looks like Joe Biden is just going to speak at Ulster University, which kind of pathetic in of itself, and then he's going to fuck off south of the border to Dublin, where he's going to swan about, pretend he's Irish, and no doubt like liberal sections of Irish society will suck his dick, because he's going to give a joint address to the Irish Doyle. I'm right here, Aaron. Doyle. Yeah, it's Doyle. It's pronounced Doyle. The Irish Doyle, which is the way they call their parliament. It's an Irish Gaelic term. The Irish Doyle's made up of, this is me bringing out my fancy political education here, the Oireachtas and the Synéad, which are both houses of the Doyle. So he's going to address both of them, because he couldn't do it in Stormont because of base DUP. So that's probably going to be even more gay and cringe. He's probably going to laud the bravery of Irish transgender youth, and how diverse and progressive Ireland is, and how it's just another San Francisco just waiting to come about, kind of thing that American foreign policy is predicated these days. So don't know if I'm going to be bothered to stay awake enough, because I was up all night to stream and watch that shit show. But we'll watch what this retard has to say in Northern Ireland. So Let's have a look and see what government-funded media, BBC, is saying about it. Probably gay and cringe.
It's a choice that he has to make, and we know that if he pushes the unionists too far, then there will be a kickback, and that'll make his job all the harder in terms of trying to influence the process here. I'm just looking off to the right, Tara, because I'm mindful that some of our politicians are starting to reappear from behind that curtain. Doug Beattie, the Ulster Unionist leader, has just reappeared. There we have Colm Eastwood just coming out after his talks with President Biden. I can see some of the other party leaders are still in there, so presumably those talks are running on a little bit longer than was anticipated, because we were told initially that these were going to be sort of a brief exchange of words. There was going to be nothing more, in a sense, than a handshake. But obviously, it's amounted to a little bit more than that, because the politicians have been in there for the past maybe 10 or 15 minutes. You can probably hear behind me here. There's a little laugh going around the room here. I'm not quite sure what that's about, because we know that everything's starting to fall.
It's nauseating. I almost certainly hate pretty much everyone in this room. Doug Beattie, leader of the UUP, should have been like the most based politician ever. He literally stabbed a Muslim to death in Afghanistan in a bayonet charge. Guy should be a war hero, but then he decided to enter politics, and he took the party I generally would have voted for, the UUP, and made them into this absolute abomination of is that Kate Hoey? That's Kate Hoey. That little goblin creature. No, not Kate Hoey. Kate Halern. That's Kate Halern. I had run-ins with her whenever I lived in England. Just Christ, fucking ugly. Doug Beattie, whenever he decided to become leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, he thought it'd be a really great election-winning strategy to say that the United Kingdom, the Union of the United Kingdom, should be there to protect things like transgender rights, gay marriage, diversity for refugees, and he completely bottomed out his party. So now everyone's sort of gone to the DUP, who have their own problems, but yeah, just a quick word on that. The abomination of the guy. Right, let's listen to what these fringe lords are saying.
A little bit of history in its way, particularly at 25 years from Good Friday.
I can tell he votes for Alliance. Just looking at him, I know he's an Alliance party voter.
For years, so for me, it's very important because this is part of the peace process and the talks and everything, and because Joe is Irish, it makes a big difference.
I come here for the weekends.
Oh my God, Joe is Irish! Like, oh my God.
He was coming, and then we've seen everyone, but we were waiting to see him, so once in a lifetime. So yeah, exciting.
A once in a lifetime experience, really. Just you know, he's one of the well-known people in the world, and it's just nice to get close. We'll maybe not see too much, but at least we're here.
I think it's a big event, and it's good to see international interest, obviously in Belfast and Northern Ireland, and hopefully it'll push things forward and get people back in government again.
So I think Belfast is completely different now. I was here 25 years ago, and now it's peaceful, and I think it's important that we keep it that way.
I think it's really important for the children to realise how important the Good Friday Agreement was, and we just want, hopefully with Joe Biden here, he'll push some things forward for us and we can keep this country in peace.
Well, the thoughts of some people.
Guess I'll reveal a bit more of my politics. Had I been of age at the time, I probably would have voted for the agreement, but in hindsight now, if it was held again, I would vote against. The Good Friday Agreement pretty much failed in everything it was meant to be doing. Unionists were sold something that never came to pass. So, oh God, here we go.
Citizens for coming, and I want to thank those from around the world who are paying attention to Northern Ireland.
Good luck, God bless you, and God bless all.
Oh God, I remember his fucking. This was during the G8 summit in Fermanagh. I went up to the airport trying to catch a sight of Putin. I remember this. This was so pathetic. Black Bob came in and tried to speak like a little bit of colloquial Northern Irish lingo, and it was just horrific. It was, God, I hate so much.
Along to, and I think meeting the first black president was something, you know, truly special.
Jesus fucking
Of all the presidential handshakes in Belfast over the years, this was the one which made the most headlines. Bill Clinton greeting Sinn Féin's Gerry Adams in West Belfast. at a time when many other politicians refuse to even talk to him.
It's a very clear symbolic indication to this community that the President of the USA was recognising them and other communities as well, of course.
Should have been killed.
Also recognising their political representative, who happened to be me.
Interesting times. It's funny watching the Obama visit, Caroline. I know you were there, and I was presenting there. I can't believe it's 10 years ago. It's hard to quantify what sort of happened in those intervening years. What was your kind of
right? So why they all while they all fellatio their secular Saint Obama, as media, liberal media always does. There was Donald Trump said he was going to visit Northern Ireland, and genuinely he would have been very popular here. The loyalist community has a very high opinion of Trump. As I occasionally have to do whenever I walk through a loyalist estate, it is not uncommon to see Trump flags flying about alongside unionist other unionist flags such as the Union Jack, the Ulster Banner, stuff like that. You do see a fair amount of Trump flags going about. Trump's personality just sort of gels with loyalists, especially and unionists, quite well. And he said, I think it was a St. Patrick's Day event, the leader of the DUP at the time, I think it was Arlene Foster, invited him to a visit of Northern Ireland, and he said he would do it. But unfortunately, of course, we all know how most popular president in history, Joe Biden, won the election. But had Trump actually ended up visiting Northern Ireland, I think that would have been an actually real big deal, especially if he came during the summer, the marching season. I think Trump would have really loved it, and he would have gotten a great reception, especially, well, probably not from nationalists, but from loyalists. He would have been, it would have been epic. I would have come across at the time, just to experience that. But instead, what we get is I mean, George Bush was kind of okay whenever he came here, but we just get like Barack Obama, who comes and says, Emma, what's a crack? And just horrific stuff like this. And now we've got noted American child Bovver has come. Oh yeah, and his son as well. So not only have we got Joe Biden, we've got his son, not his dead son, his crackhead son, the pedophile crackhead son. He's decided to bring him along as well for some reason. I don't know if it's to explore the local coke scene in Belfast or what, but that's what we're being blessed with. So Northern Ireland, lock up your children. The pedos are in town.
It's open for business and trying to declare normalcy. That gave a huge boost to the peace process and a hope that there would actually be a deal. It put pressure on our politicians as well to make sure that they weren't going to squander this opportunity when we had such support from the US to try and get a deal. I think it was very important, and obviously Mitchell's role then in terms of negotiating this agreement, absolutely crucial.
And it's interesting, isn't it, because that was December 95, then you got to 97, 98, and even in that late night Thursday into Good Friday morning, you know, the phone calls to various different people. President Clinton was the voice on the line from the other side of the world.
Very much so, and apparently those calls were crucial. They were when the real difficult issues at the final stage about the wording of decommissioning, about policing reform, about even the time within which the prisoners would be coming out, all of these things that were just so hard to get agreement on, and that Clinton was phoning both Trimble and Gerry Adams and constantly speaking to the two governments. And I think he phoned both Trimble and Adams a number of times. So I think that intervention was very, very important in terms of it.
Again, this is sort of like this weird mythology that's wrapped up around the agreement. There's always this thing like, because it was signed on Good Friday, it was auspicious and stuff. No, there was like immense pressure on the people negotiating the treaty for it to be signed on Good Friday, just for like the optics of it. The idea that like Bill Clinton is the guy who did it, who like clinched the treaty, is just like revisionist history of it. What happened was, the conflict had got to such a stage where the provisional IRA was effectively stalemated by the army. The 1980s had been pretty brutal. The pretty uncompromising policy of the Thatcher government had whittled out like the really militant Republican movement. It really crippled the IRA in the 1980s. In the 90s, it started to ease up a bit, but because you had the collapse of the Soviet Union and you had the collapse of apartheid in South Africa, which, as Republicans always do, they always look to other people with darker skins than them to try and base their legitimacy on. That was the kind of thing that kind of took like the momentum out of the, I don't know how to explain it, like, as it wasn't moral, but like the moral argument for like the IRA campaign. So you had this sort of like military stalemate, but the big thing is you had a change of government from the Conservatives in 1997. Of course, the agreement was largely started, the ceasefire came in 1995. But John Major wasn't the best, but he was a bit more stringent than Tony Blair. So you had the change between the Conservative government to the new Labour government, who like really started to sell out on a lot of stuff to get the treaty. And then it's just part of like, had things gone on, I don't want to say there would have been a military victory, but there would have been a treaty at some point. It would have just been more weighted in the favor of like the unionists and loyalists, as opposed to what we ended up getting, having to get rid of our police force and all the other fuckery that came with that. But it's just this weird sort of like revisionist history and rewriting of how the Good Friday Agreement came about, so you can shoehorn the Americans in. So we have an excuse to invite whatever American president happens to be in power along, and it does my head in.
Is the special relationship at the moment?
That's the thing, isn't it, that we always obsess around.
Yeah, we do.
Particularly in the UK, perhaps less so in the US. And actually, quite striking, I've just been watching the motorcade making its way through the streets here. And yes, of course, part of the motorcade is about security. But it's also a projection of power, isn't it? A colossal projection of power, puffing back of the shoulders and all of that. As the motorcade is sort of half a mile long or whatever, and you're onto car number 35 or whatever.
Let's have a quick look around, see if there's any other streams that are a little bit more not quite as toadying. So there's also a thing is like it's pretty much widely understood that this visit is a damn squid, that it's a failure of a visit. What's the Sky News one?
Making it clear that that can only happen once power sharing is returned.
Yeah, and saying that it's important that everyone's lifted by economic progress, and that will happen.
We might
with a stable
rotate between Sky News and between
and urging to governing. She's obviously the warm-up woman and the trail for the president himself, and he will be, I think, speaking to the same themes. We're expecting his speech to be very much about trade and economic themes and about investment, and we'll have three pillars. There's that economic carrot.
So, what was I just saying? So, his visit has widely been seen to like being a failure, a damn squib. Some are calling it a snub. He's coming to Northern Ireland on this auspicious anniversary, and he makes a whole deal about his Irish heritage at Northern Ireland, which is something that loads of people seem to do. You have Jeremy Corbyn claim it, you have fucking Bono claiming it, you've got this dickhead claiming it. Apparently it's just like one of the things, if you're ever tangentially related to like anything to do with Northern Ireland, is you claim you somehow brought about... What's this?
As you can see, let's take a listen to what Senator Kennedy has to say.
Old shipyards turned into incubators for cutting-edge technology. Tourism surging among ancient walls in the soft light of fertile fields. And folks, we're back to.
Hey, what?
Proud of that wager. At what you have created. Record GDP growth. University classrooms filled to the brim. Old shipyards turned into incubators for cutting-edge technology. Tourism surging among ancient walls in the soft light.
Sky News one seems to be a little bit ahead of the BBC
and folks, we're back to. Proud of that wager and ready to double down on a bet that has produced a peace dividend, with now hundreds of U.S. companies operating in Northern Ireland and creating tens of thousands of jobs. The #1 foreign investment location for cybersecurity. Some of the biggest companies in the world have set up shop here. And now some entrepreneurs with dreams to outcompete them are following. People ask me all the time, why Northern Ireland? Why invest here? Why come? Is it proximity, market access, the extraordinarily good weather? We've had it for 12 hours, we'll take it. Folks, it's you. An American CEO told me a story when he was first visiting Belfast a few years ago, looking to expand his business. His flight landed fine, his bags did not. So he went straight to a store that night to try to get a new suit for a 7:30 a.m. breakfast meeting. He got a jacket, but the pants didn't fit. The store's owner took those pants and drove an hour that night to his mother's home, where he altered them and drove early that next morning back, hand-delivered them to that CEO by 7 a.m. in his hotel lobby. That gentleman turned to me and said, I don't care what you're going to say in your talk. It doesn't matter. That guy sold me on Northern Ireland better than any government official ever could. He went on and established a huge presence here. As far as I know, still wears those tailored pants. We believe in Northern Ireland. We believe in you. We believe in your future. We believe in your kids. We believe in these amazing kids. A few weeks ago, a Harvard student from Belfast called himself a peace baby, raised on hope and the troubles, a fading memory. I am so incredibly proud of President Biden's commitment to those peace babies, expanding their opportunity.
Commitment? What's he done?
And I'm humbled by the chance to be a part of shaping that commitment.
Right, I think the pedophiles coming in.
Thank you for your incredible contributions, for your vision and your determination.
No, wait, never mind. It's the Secretary of State.
And more than anything,
sorry,
I look forward to
right,
drawing
BBC,
on your energy,
my license fee is not
that
paying for this. You're behind. No, wait, is he?
In a future worth betting on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Orr, Chief Executive Officer of
Joe Kennedy there, really interesting. Caroline, I love the story about the trousers, but if
I hate these little anecdotal things they do. So, I forgot I was saying something, but I completely lost it.
I thought it was very interesting that he decided to go down that line, referencing the so-called peace babies, of which I'm almost one. I was very small myself whenever the Good Friday Agreement was signed. So very much that forward-looking momentum is very positive to be hearing, and we'll see how President Biden then reinforces it in his speech.
I'm sure that, Dominic, that he will continue with that sort of theme that we heard from Kennedy there.
Well, we're told the theme's going to be about the Good Friday Agreement, celebrating one of America's great diplomatic achievements of our time, but also it's going to be primarily, I think, trade and economic and investment related. He's going to be saying that America's going to support and encourage investment into Northern Ireland, and I think the hope is that that will happen more effectively.
They say this at the same time Washington is constantly pressuring the British government and Northern Irish parties to give up on our attempts to reintegrate ourselves back into our national markets.
In Downing Street, but also amongst his own officials, will be
our biggest market, the vast majority of all goods and services that come out of Northern Ireland, and our tourism comes from Great Britain, from the rest of the country we are part of. Yet, I should probably. But at the same time, they're constantly undermining our attempts to reintegrate into that because of the weird Brexit deal that the Tories kind of pooped onto us. It's just
want to have a president who's regarded as pro-nationalist by many, too pro-Dublin, but also someone who is fairly gaffe-prone, who speaks off the cuff. And I think the fear might be amongst his hosts, but also amongst his own officials, that if he was able to go off the leash, he might be saying things which would be causing upset at what is clearly a sensitive time politically, while the Stormont Assembly is not sitting.
Yeah, and Claire, I mean, how much of a concern
Massive
do you think
crowds.
is,
Look at all the people, all the throngs of waiting onlookers coming to see.
We just heard the end
Sleepy
of
Joe.
what Ambassador Hartley was saying, where she did talk about governing returning. I mean, that's going to be running through all of these speeches. But there is real fear that President Biden needs to stick to that script, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with what has been said. I mean, if it is the case that Joe Biden is minded that he wants to encourage a return to power sharing here, he needs to do so without expressly saying that. And this goes back to the idea of whether or not he'll be pressuring, particularly the DUP, to do that, or whether he can offer some gentle encouragement through effectively a carrot and stick approach. And I think, you know, the sort of language that is being used, certainly that we've heard from Joe Kennedy so far, what we expect to hear from President Biden, all of that sets the groundwork there for a gentle encouragement, but at the same time being very clear and saying this is what needs to happen in order to reap all of those benefits. So yeah, it'll be a very interesting speech tonight to listen to what he has to say.
And Dr. Rice, you know, the media have assembled here. We've got huge police lines there as we await. There's a gathering of people at the front. There's some protesters and some people who've come to see, you know, this spectacle.
Oh, that was it. I was tempted to go to one of the protests. Whenever his visit was first announced, I was tempted to like follow him about with loud Taylor, like calling him a pedo or something like that. But obviously, if he's only here for 17 hours, and the problem is like the unionists and loyalists aren't doing protests. The only people who are protesting are like really baggy Republican types, like Irish nationalist types, and fuck if I'm going to be. Oh look, looks like he's about to come out. I'll be fucked if I'm ever going to one of their protests, because I'm not going to stand amongst those people and scream about Palestinian rights, or, you know, there isn't enough gay acceptance in West Belfast or something like that. So it looks like he's coming, so we might get his gay and cringe speech shortly.
Speech here, but also further afield will be seeking reassurance that the White House, the institution of the office of the President, has played such a big role in the peace process here. And if you look at what Bill Clinton and his envoy George Mitchell did throughout the negotiations in the 90s that led to the Good Friday agreements, but also after that, Bill Clinton came here after the Omagh bombing and gave this very powerful speech in Armagh where there was a lot of fear that bombing would totally upend the Good Friday peace agreements.
I can hear protesters in the background.
Reassuring people, steadying, I think, the atmosphere here, and saying, you know, you've proven that peace can be done even when everyone says it's impossible. He said, you know, 25 years ago, I'm going to say to the Indians and the Pakistanis, to the Israelis and the Palestinians, to people in the Balkans, don't say it's impossible. Just look to Northern Ireland, because it is possible. And that, I think, that theme of America being involved in the peace process here and playing such an important assertive role is something that the President, his successor, I think we've had seven presidential visits since then, and Joe Biden, I think, will be coming in that kind of, following in that line and that tradition, but not wanting to get so involved that he could alienate the parties at what is a very fragile, precarious time in the politics.
Yeah, saying he wants to build on it for the future of prosperity, but as you say, he says he's here in listening mode and doesn't want to alienate any of the parties. It's worth also talking as well, Dominic, about
the type of people
Joe Biden
who are doing the protests
home, and how much this visit to Northern Ireland and, of course, to the Republic is important. But you'll answer that question in a moment, because we're going to go back inside the auditorium.
Socialism for the 21st century. These are the people doing the protests, so that's why I'm not going to any of them.
1998, like Dr. Rice here is speaking. Let's take a listen.
With support from the Ulster University Enterprise Centre and Young Enterprise NI, with my most recent venture focused on sustainable cork furniture. As we come together today to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, I'd like to reflect upon its success in providing everyone here with a sense of ownership, opportunity and a new beginning. Opportunity is perhaps the most fundamental success of the Good Friday Agreement. My generation has been able to experience a country that boasts a wealth of new opportunities and has produced a generation with unswerving ambition. I am proud to come from a generation of like-minded individuals who have been bred on the what-ifs and why-nots of the world, where simply no feat is too great to be conquered. A youth which continues to strive for better, one which represents Northern Ireland on a global stage, and one which exhibits some of the world's greatest talents. Whilst it is important to recognise the successes we have seen these last 25 years, it is of equal importance to look ahead to the 25 years to come. The state-of-the-art campus that we are gathered in today
that's
is a
going to be
reflection
great.
of the
How many
confidence placed in our
refugees can we
youth,
fit into
not to
Belfast in the
mention
next 25 years?
That are the foundations upon which this
Looking
new
forward to the
generation can realise
Netflix
their full potential.
documentary on this, on the Good Friday Agreement, where half fucking class is going to be black or gay
but
or...
also to approach it with confidence and belief in our proven qualities and capabilities as a generation. It is now my great honour to introduce the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Boo. Boo. Going to sniff her hair. Oh, she's too old for him to sniff her hair, isn't she? No, he is. He's leaning in for a sniff. He just got snooped.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Fuck off.
What a great, please have a seat. It's a great honor to be here. I just told Gabrielle that when she's the leading public figure in this country, and I show up, promise she won't say Joe who is outside. You say Joe Biden. Remember, just remember me, okay? All right.
Is he talking about Gabrielle?
Chancellor Davidson, Vice Chancellor Bartholomew, thank you for hosting us today on this beautiful campus of Ulster University.
Why has he got such
I came
beady
here
eyes?
in '91 in this neighborhood, and you couldn't have a glass building like this here in this neighborhood. I don't think it would have stood up very well. But things are changing. Lord Mayor Black and Secretary of State of Northern Ireland, Heaton Harris, thank you for the welcome to Belfast. And Mr. Speaker, and leaders of Northern Ireland's leading 5 political parties, I was honored to welcome you to the White House a few weeks ago, and it's wonderful to see all of you again today. And Ambassador Hartley, thank you for your outstanding work leading our mission to the UK.
So he started off his
Hartley
speech with a car bomb joke. So it's a fucking bold move.
A former ambassador from Great Britain to the United States. The home of that ambassador and the embassy is along the fence line of the Vice President's residence, which I lived in for 8 years. And the Vice President and I became friends with the ambassador. And his last trip back home before he came back to Washington to serve out the final few months of his term, he told me he was going to bring something back for me. And so I didn't know what he had in mind, but when he came back, we had him over the house. We spent some time together, he and his wife and I and my wife. And he brought back a book with a photograph on the front of the book. It had been just reprinted, the book, of a somewhat stout British captain in his quarters with a big bulldog sitting next to him. And his name was Captain George Biden, because he used to always kid me and saying, you know, Biden's English. You talk about the Irish, Biden's English. And he told me that he went back and he had the Lord Admiralty, this is God's true story, check. And my great 1840, I think it was 1842, could have been 1828. I can't remember. It's one of those two dates. Had written.
I'm going to pause it here. So what's happened is he's clearly picked up the British fucking hate him. There's lots of people talking about in the British media at the moment how he hates us. He doesn't like unionism. So what he's done is he's gone and looked for some anecdote to tie him into his English heritage, of which he has more of than he has Irish heritage. So that's what this is trying to assuage here.
The rules of mutiny for the British Navy. And I said, well, at least that part's consistent, Reverend. Mutiny. But anyway, he used to always kid me when I'd say, talk about, he'd say, yeah, you talk about the Irish. He said, you're English. Just remember that. Then I found out, my sister and I found out the name Robinette, my middle name's Robinette. I thought that all those years it was French. They must have been Huguenots because they came to Great Britain in the 1700s, somewhere along the way, and they're all from Nottingham. So I don't know what the hell's going on here.
Right, I'm not too sure where he's going at, because he's in Northern Ireland, but now he's pandering to the English. Like, if he should be talking about the, it's just it's pathetic.
You come back, it's confusing. And anyway, Consul General Nairn and Envoy, Special Envoy Joe Kennedy, thank you for your efforts to continue deepening and strengthening the ties between Northern Ireland and the United States. It's good to see Belfast, a city that's alive with commerce, art, and I would argue inspiration. The dividends of peace are all around us, and this very campus is situated in an intersection where conflict and bloodshed once held a terrible sway. The idea, as I said, to have a glass building here when I was here in '91 was highly unlikely. Where barbed wire once sliced up the city, today we find a cathedral of learning, built of glass, and let the shine light out in and out. It just has a profound impact for someone who's come back to see it.
See, not quite where he's talking about, because where the University of Ulster is it's down by the Cathedral Quarter.
25 years ago this week,
wasn't really the area that was like
Good
bombed
Friday
that
Agreement
much.
was signed. And it wasn't easy. I was a
It was
United
like a
States Senator at the
post-industrial
time,
site.
and I worked very closely with my good friend George Mitchell, who'll be here, I believe, in a couple days. And there were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold. No guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future. Leaders for peace like John Hume and David Trimble and David Irvine and Monica McWilliams and Mary Robinson, etc. They were all people that I got to meet back then. And it took people all across Northern Ireland who made the choice to work for a brighter and a shared future. At the time, it seemed so distant, some of it. It seemed so distant. First at the ballot box, and every day since, the acts of seeing each other through the lens of a common
don't even get me
humanity,
started on that rabbit hole.
which again, when I first came here as a young senator, didn't seem like it was realistic. It took pioneering women across all communities and parties that said enough, enough, and demanded change, as well as a seat at the negotiating table, including through the Northern Ireland Women's Coalition. And it took a determined effort of my good friend, someone who embodies the country's commitment to all the people in this region, Senator George Mitchell. And, you know, his time serving as special envoy for Northern Ireland is one of the great examples in history of the right person for the right job at the right time, in my view. I think sometimes, especially when the distance of history, we forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. Literally, it shifted the political gravity. In 1998, it was the longest-running conflict in Europe since the end of World War II. Thousands of families had been affected by the Troubles. Losses were real. The pain was personal. I need not tell many people in this audience. Every person killed in the Troubles left an empty chair at that dining room table and a hole in the heart that was never filled for the ones they lost. Peace was not inevitable. We can't ever forget that. There was nothing inevitable about it. As George Mitchell often said, the negotiations had, quote, 700 days of failure and 1 day of success. 700 days of failure and 1 day of success. But they kept going because George and all the many others never stopped believing that success was possible. And I want all of you to know, especially the young people in the audience today, and don't jump, okay? Oh, I didn't see it all the way up there. As my father would say, please excuse my back, I apologize. But all kidding aside, the American people are with you. Every step of the way, it's real.
It really does have
Those of you who've been to America know that there is a large population that is invested in what happens here, that cares a great deal about what happens here. Supporting the people of Northern Ireland, protecting the peace, preserving the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is a priority for Democrats and Republicans alike in the United States, and that is unusual today because we've been very divided on our parties. This is something that brings Washington together. It brings America together. I spoke about this with Northern Ireland's political leaders as well as the Taoiseach on our St. Patrick's Day celebration at the White House. It's been the key focus for me throughout my career. I remember working as a senator to see how the United States could support and encourage, bit by bit, any moves toward peace. I got elected in 1972 as a 29-year-old kid to the United States Senate. And it was just the start of it. I mean, it seemed like it was a goal that was so far away. I remember coming here, as I said, in '91, seeing this city divided and barricaded. Then in '94, when the ceasefire was declared, it was like a sea change. The tide of violence began to recede, hope rolling in. In 1998, overwhelming joy. It's hard to communicate just how deeply invested in your success, the people across the United States are. And those of you who've been there know it. You know it. I'm not making this up. This is real. It's almost people can taste it. The family ties, the pride, and those ultra-Scots immigrants, those ultra-Scots immigrants who helped found and build my country. They run very deep, very deep. Men born in Ulster were among those who signed the Declaration of Independence in the United States, pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for freedom's cause.
Trying to butter us up.
The man who printed the revolutionary document was John Dunlap. He hailed from County Tyrone. And countless others established new lives of opportunity across the Atlantic, planting farms, founding communities, starting businesses, never forgetting their connection to this island. As a matter of fact, as you walk into my office in the Oval Office in the United States Capitol, guess what? You know who founded and designed and built the White House? An Irishman. No, not a joke. Not a joke. Passing it down generation after generation. Your history is our history. But even more important, your future is America's future. Today's Belfast is the beating heart of Northern Ireland and is poised to drive unprecedented economic opportunity and investment from communities across the UK, across Ireland, and across the United States. The simple truth is that peace and economic opportunity go together. Peace and economic opportunity go together. In the 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement, Northern Ireland's gross domestic product has literally doubled. Double. And I predict to you, if things continue to move in the right direction, it'll more than triple. There are scores of major American corporations wanting to come here, wanting to invest. Many have already made homes in Northern Ireland, employing over 30,000 people. And in just the past decade, American business has generated almost $2 billion in investment in the region. $2 billion. Today, Northern Ireland is a churn of creativity, art, poetry, theater. Some of our favorite television shows, the movies are filmed here, as you know. And I understand the star of the recent Oscar-winning film and someone of Belfast barista, James Martin, is here today. James, where are you?
Oh, this is Down syndrome guy, isn't it?
I got to meet James, and I got my picture taken. I'm going to go home and brag to my daughter. Cruise ships packed with tourists filled Belfast port. And young people, instead of fleeing for opportunities elsewhere, can see their futures and careers for themselves that speak to unlimited possibilities here. How many of you have heard over the years, those who are closer to my age, Mom, Dad, there's nothing here for me. I'm going to move. I'm going to leave. I got to go. Well, it's not happening now. So it's up to us to keep this going, to keep building on the work that has been done every day for the last 25 years, to sustain the peace, unleash this incredible economic opportunity, which is just beginning. I promise you. You think I'm joking? It's just beginning. We get this, keep it going. We all know there's more we can do together. You know, there's so much energy and dynamism, especially among young people who are starting their own businesses, blazing their own trails, connecting to the global community of entrepreneurs. And young people in Northern Ireland are on the cutting edge of sectors that are going to define so much of the future. Cyber, technology, clean energy, life sciences. Here in Northern Ireland.
Streaming chat,
like young
geopolitical streaming.
Young Enterprise Northern Ireland, helping thousands of young people each year gain skills and pursue the goals, their goals as entrepreneurs. That's why I asked Joe Kennedy, my new special envoy in Northern Ireland of Economic Affairs, to help supercharge that work, to bring more businesses, more investment, more opportunity here to Northern Ireland, and help realize the enormous economic potential of this region. Because I know parenthetically, when that happens here, it gives faith to people around the world. If it can be done here, it can be done in my community. Not a joke. The world is changing. It's changing drastically. And it presents enormous opportunity, but also significant dangers. To that end, later this year, Joe's going to be leading a trade delegation of American companies to Northern Ireland. Now, I know the UK's departure from the European Union created complex challenges here in Northern Ireland. And I encourage the leaders of the UK and the EU to address the issues in a way that serves Northern Ireland's best interests.
Propped up one side.
I deeply appreciate the personal leadership of Prime Minister Sunak and European Commissioner von der Leyen to reach an agreement. The Windsor Framework addresses the practical realities of Brexit and it's an essential step to ensuring
Jeffrey Donaldson, leader of the
DUP,
giving a wild smirk like this guy is full of shit.
Strengthened. You know, the negotiators listened to business leaders across the UK and Ireland who shared what they needed to succeed. And I believe the stability and predictability offered by this framework will encourage greater investment in Northern Ireland, significant investment in Northern Ireland. I come from a little state where, in the state of Delaware and back home, it has more corporations that are registered in that state than every other state in the union combined. So I know a little bit about corporate attitudes. All the immense progress we see around us was built through conversation and compromise, discussion and debate, voting and inclusion. It's an incredible attestation to the power of democracy to deliver needs for all the people. And now I know better than most how hard democracy can be at times. We in the United States have firsthand experience how fragile even long-standing democratic institutions can be. You saw what happened on January the 6th in my country. We learn anew with every generation that democracy needs champions.
Yeah,
when
champions
college,
who win pretty dodgy elections.
Every generation has to fight to preserve democracies. I didn't believe it at the time. I just thought it was automatic. We had this great democracy. What would we need to do? As a friend, I hope it's not too presumptuous of me to say that I believe democratic institutions established through the Good Friday Agreement remain critical to the future of Northern Ireland. It's a decision for you to make, not for me to make. But it seems to me they're related. An effective, devolved government that reflects the people of Northern Ireland and is accountable to them. A government that works to find ways through hard problems together is going to draw even greater opportunity in this region. So I hope the Assembly and the Executive will soon be restored. That's a judgment for you to make, not me, but I hope it happens. Along with the institutions that facilitate North-South and East-West relations, all of which are vital pieces of the Good Friday Agreement. For in politics, no matter what divides us, if we look hard enough, there are always areas that's going to bring us together if we look hard enough. Standing for peace, rejecting political violence must be one of those things. So I want to once more recognize the way the leaders of Northern Ireland's major political parties come together in the wake of attempted murder of Detective Chief Inspector Caldwell to show that the enemies of peace will not prevail.
So it should just pretty
Northern
clarify
Ireland
there
will not go back,
dissident
pray
Republicans
God.
tried to murder a police officer a couple weeks
was
back.
a hard reminder that there will always be those who seek to destroy rather than
Dissident
rebuild.
Irish Republicans, that is.
The lesson of the Good Friday Agreement is this: in times when things seem fragile or easily broken, that is when hope and hard work are needed the most. That's when we must make our theme repair, repair. And in Holy Easter season, this season, when all Christians celebrate renewal and life, the Good Friday Agreement showed us that there is hope for repair, even in the most awful breakages. You know, it helped people all around the world to hope for renewal and progress in their own lives. And most of all, allowed an entire generation of young people in Northern Ireland and across the UK and the Republic of Ireland to grow up in a society mended by connection, made stronger by independence, interdependence, and respect. Young people like Gabrielle, who we just heard from earlier. Her success and her opportunities have been underwritten by the Good Friday Agreement. Young people like Jordan Graham, born less than 3 weeks after the agreement was signed in 1998. His whole life is unfolded under the wing of peace, which means not quite 25 years of age, he's been able to build an expertise in branding and marketing that he's used to help grow local businesses, support startups, consult for charities. Young people like Amy Clint, born in 2000, whose parents like to tell the story about how she came home from her first day of secondary school and asked, "What's the difference between a Protestant and a Catholic? What's the difference between a Protestant and a Catholic?" She didn't grow up thinking in sectarian divides. She grew up thinking about how she should support her beloved brother and other children with autism. Today, Amy's social enterprise has donated more than 5,000 copies of her book to schools across Northern Ireland to help children better understand autism and to learn to treat others with kindness.
So we haven't got quite Troons on tape, but we've got the artists based artists.
Compassion. It changed how this entire region sees itself. In the words of Morrissey, Belfast's first poet laureate, what's left is dark and quiet, but bookended by light, as when Dorothy opens the dull cabin door and what happens outside is technicolor. What happens outside is technicolor. This place is transformed by peace, made technicolor by peace, made whole by peace. So today, I come to Belfast to pledge to all the people.
This is one of the protesters outside.
The United States of America will continue to be your partner in building the future.
Had I known this based woman was going to be here, I'd have gone down and joined her. Not that I'm a Catholic or anything, but immense respect for this woman.
And to me personally, it genuinely matters if you've traveled my country. So let's celebrate 25 extraordinary years by recommitting to renewal, repair, by making this exceptional peace the birthright of every child in Northern Ireland for all the days to come. That's what we should be doing. God willing, you'll be able to do it. Thank you all for listening, and may God bring you the peace we need. Thank you.
So, it wasn't particularly long, wasn't particularly anything out of note. Bit strange to start it with a bomb joke about blowing up all the glass in a building. That's certainly a brave, interesting way to start a speech. Clearly, overnight he was told that people fucking hate him, that this entire trip is going down badly. that he's widely seen as being far too pro-Irish nationalist and anti-British and anti-unionist. So he had to sort of butter us up with a lot of talk about Ulster Scots, of which, like, the substance of what he was saying is true. Like, a lot of people, so a lot of people from Scotland came to live in Northern Ireland. They were settled, or they came as part of the plantations, or they moved across. There's a lot of very close cultural links between Northern Ireland and Scotland. In some respects, like, if Scotland goes independent, maybe I don't want that to happen, but if it does, maybe Northern Ireland should go with it, because it's culturally, Northern Ireland is closer to Scotland than I'd say it is to the Irish Republic, at least very much in the unionist community. A lot of the Americans call them the Scots-Irish. Here they're called Ulster Scots. A lot of those people, like, settled places like Appalachia. These were the frontiersmen. That sort of, like, hillbilly redneck culture, bluegrass, country music, all that comes from Scotch-Irish people. So that's, and they're the people who make up a large predominant part of the unionist population in Northern Ireland, especially the loyalist population. Then you have the Anglo-Irish, which is a bit nuanced in itself. So obviously he was told that he's not particularly popular with those people, so he tried to throw them a bit of a ham bone, and then he went into his English heritage in a sort of weird roundabout way. So interestingly, overnight, someone was told him, like, hey, Joe, they fucking hate you. Try and put something into your speech that so people don't fucking hate us and hate you as much. So he tried to do that for a bit. And I mean, the rest of it was sort of continuing the sort of, it's kind of just a very normie thing at this stage, a sort of revisionist view of the troubles and how the Good Friday Agreement came about, but most of it seemed to have been a talk about economics and trade. I think why his trip is so short is, one, I think he genuinely just sort of has a bit of a disdain for Northern Ireland, for the United Kingdom, for British people, especially unionists, so he doesn't particularly want to be here too long, but also it's kind of not a very good optics if he's coming to sort of talk up how he helped end us killing each other in our war, but yet the devolved administration that resulted from that is not in operation, and a couple of the parties and one of the big major parties outright sort of reviles him and resents his intrusion into our politics and trying to lecture and dictate and influence our politics. So I can imagine he's probably going to, he'll be like a troon in a primary school, I guess, whenever he goes south of the border. Yeah, this guy sort of looked like Nick Fuentes a bit. Nick Fuentes moonlight as a Secret Service agent. This guy here. But so whenever he goes down south of the border, I can imagine he'll probably start wearing a leprechaun hat, drinking green-colored Guinness. Like I say, he'll probably be as happy as a troon in a primary school, elementary school at that stage. Because this trip to Northern Ireland has been pretty brief and it's not been the best. And yeah.
Envoy George Mitchell, Senator George Mitchell, put it at the time, it took 700 days of failure and just one day of success to bring about the peace agreements. And he really emphasised, I think, that America's role in the agreement, but also use that to renew America's commitment to Northern Ireland now. Said American people are with you every step of the way. It's real. And said that actually this is an issue that combines both Democrats and Republicans, those on both sides of the political aisle in America, at a time that is very polarised. Support for peace here and for the Good Friday Agreement is something that combines and unites Americans.
Of course, they had to find the single black woman in Northern Ireland and shoehorn her into the fucking thing, didn't they?
The Good Friday Agreement has brought Northern Ireland, saying it's double GDP here, and saying this is just the beginning. And that's, I think,
the only Indian woman as well.
Speech really was that the economic promise that the Good Friday Agreement and peace has brought to Northern Ireland.
Disgustingly diverse these days.
And that there's a lot more that could come. if only the politicians here can settle their differences and get back into power sharing. And as you were saying, it was a sort of subtle, it was not over assertive, I think, exhortation to politicians to get back into power sharing, but saying if you're honest and loyal to the interests of your own people, you've got to get back together, bury the hatchets and get back to power sharing.
Yeah, and as we're talking, Dominic, you can see Joe Biden just working the room following that speech, speaking to those there that have been in the room, listening to him.
There is
having a quick interaction with the actor James Martin,
in the background
who
of the Sky News.
Took some applause when mentioned by President Biden, of course, a recent Oscar winner, and also speaking to Gabrielle Feenan, the entrepreneur who did welcome President Biden to the stage. It'll be interesting to see if while in the room he goes around and speaks to any of the political leaders there that have been
off of the current stream subject, but former President Donald Trump, in an interview with Fox News, expressed confidence that Russia did not blow up Nord Stream gas lines. While he refrained from further developments on the topic, he was adamant that Russia was not responsible for it. So there you go. Trump is red-pilled on Nord Stream.
The Good Friday Agreement and has been concerned about that publicly. And he said that he believes the Windsor Agreement is the best way forward. And encourage politicians to get behind that, and said that significant investment should follow. But the main lessons that America has to bring to this is the importance of institutions, and saying that all institutions, all democratic institutions, are challenged at times, and talks about January the 6th and what challenge that has brought American democracy.
Here we go, Jan 6th again.
There. But also said that conversation and compromise was essential. So encouraging politicians to follow American leads and others here.
Apparently there is someone protesting outside of the university with a Trump flag.
To bury their differences and to get behind the power sharing agreement that is
want to get a picture
at the heart of the Good Friday agreements. It doesn't work.
Have a look at Twitter and see if I can see that.
It's come and gone. It's been suspended and been renewed a number of times. But he's saying it's important now that politicians of all parties here get back together and get back to power sharing, because the economic promise of this part of the world is so great that it's going to be worth it for everybody to do so.
Yes, you can see the president there taking a few selfies with some of the students who've come to listen to him speak. And as he was speaking, Dr. Rice, we saw a few shots of the room, a few of the backs of people's heads they were listening on.
Secret Service agency that had
Jeffrey Donson, leader of the DUP, and Michelle O'Neill from Sinn Féin, of course, First Minister and Deputy First Minister there sitting together, not in power sharing at the moment, but sort of the choreography, the symbolism of them sitting together, listening to President Biden as he tries to encourage them back will be important.
Absolutely, and we referenced as well the attempted murder on a senior police officer here in Northern Ireland just a number of weeks ago, and really emphasised, the political leaders in Northern Ireland were able to come together and denounce.
So, DUP leader, DUP is the largest unionist party, the second largest party in Stormont, has said that, quote, I hope that he doesn't come here and lecture us about democracy and getting Stormont Assembly going. He wouldn't accept any, Sammy Wilson this is, wouldn't accept any interference in the affairs of America. Oh, no, wait. He, as in President Biden, wouldn't accept any interference in the affairs of America by outside bodies or outside governments, and I don't think he should expect us to respond to that either. So that was before the speech, but that was the DUP. This is a White House employee, and look at all the piercings she's got going. Can't really see it, but she has a nose ring, 2 lip rings. And this is a White House employee. She's got a... Wow. I mean, I had lip rings, but I didn't work for a senior government position.
Concerned that he might lean very heavily on his Irish identity coming here, but the fact that he decided to start his speech by saying, actually, yes, I'm an Irishman, I have those heritage, a lot of heritage and those links, but I also have links to an English identity as well as part of my heritage. So that's very much saying, look, yes, I might fly the Irish flag, in terms of how I speak about things, but just like people from Northern Ireland, there's a multiplicity to my identity, and all of these kind of tie in with the dynamics that we see on the ground here in Northern Ireland as well. So I thought that was was a positive start that we weren't necessarily expecting him to do. And I think that'll be positively received, because there was a sense of concern that he was going to very much, I suppose, use the same sort of language and rhetoric that he'll be using south of the border in the next few days.
As we continue to look at these pictures of President Biden in the auditorium there at Ulster University, you can see speaking there to the Northern Ireland Secretary, Chris Heaton-Harris, just exchanging a few brief words there. And Dominic, you know, they will have had a conversation earlier today, won't they, when President Biden was meeting with Rishi Sunak. It's worth paying close attention to who he's speaking to now, because it would seem as if he's getting some of the political leaders as well. But they will have had a conversation, of course, and I guess the Chris Heaton-Harris will have given President Biden a few points on to how to address those points about Brexit, about power sharing, and how to say sensitively, let's get this thing started again.
Well, I think, yeah, that would have been fed through the speech-making process that would have been underway at the American Embassy and at the White House for weeks ahead of this event. Of course, the President has also met the Prime Minister for what appears to be a slightly sort of pared-down meeting. We thought it was going to be a full-scale bilateral diplomatic encounter, and then a US official said that it would be more of a bi-latte, saying it would be a sort of more of a coffee meeting, which is, I think, had people scratching their heads as to what the diplomatic significance of that is. And all we've had out of that meeting so far, I think, is that that the President was asked, what will you be doing in this meeting, what will you be discussing? He says, I'm here to listen. He also talked about what a great view they had.
Meanwhile, across the Irish Sea, let's have a look and see what the Pakistani leader of Scotland is up to. This is what the Scots are... Oh, where'd it go? This is what the Scots are doing. The Scottish government is going to take the London government to court, because the London government is saying that men just can't declare themselves women and be allowed to rape women in prisons and stuff. So that's what the other devolved administration in the UK is doing. Pretty mind-bending stuff.
He's had a quick chat with her off the back of this speech. We were waiting to see when he gets to speak to any of the other leaders within the room.
Yes.
Sorry, yes. No, it is very interesting, and just looking at the joviality there, whenever the First Minister designate and President Biden were talking to each other there, you know, it does show that there is somewhat of a relationship there. It'd be interesting to see just what the reaction is with the other party leaders, presumably as he moves around the room here. But yeah, thinking about the optics of this in itself, you know, it's quite notable that Michelle O'Neill is standing there on her own, albeit with colleagues from her own party around her. You know, it doesn't seem to be the normal type of procession that you might expect to see in these sorts of scenarios, where it's very much choreographed. You have everyone lined up in terms of their seniority, and you know, it's all very formally done. This seems to be very much just a very informal walk around, and whoever comes across first is the first person to get there. So that in itself might have an interesting dynamic thereafter, you know, as people deconstruct what they're viewing here and think about, you know, why is it or how is it that certain individuals were able to get to the President quicker than others. So that'll be it'll be interesting to watch just who comes forward next and how that all works out.
Yeah, I think you also had a quick chat with Alex Maskey, who would have been, I think, Speaker as well, and Colin Eastwood from the SDLP. And I suppose it is who comes forward to speak to him, but I guess also who hangs on to speak to him is important too.
Absolutely, yeah, and the amount of time that they spend with each other as well. You know, if it's seen that President Biden, for example, is spending more time with a leader from one party than another, it's Northern Ireland, these things will be picked apart, so that in itself could be something that is poured over in the days ahead.
Yes, it's more of a huddle, isn't it? It's more of a free-for-all, and as you say, who can get to the President and get a word with him. And we were told, you know, we've been asking ahead of this, and they were asking on the plane on Air Force One as Joe Biden was coming here, is he going to meet all the leaders, all 5 leaders of the parties? Will they be separate meetings? Will it be more informal? I'm not entirely clear, I don't think we are yet, as to what will follow this, but it does seem at this stage to be more of an informal huddle, people sort of pressing forward to meet him. We've not seen Sir Geoffrey Donaldson yet, have we?
I don't know what the protesters are shouting. I think they're
trying to make his way towards the President or not. He, of course, was late, and while all the other leaders were here, he turned up late, and I think questions were raised actually in some concern as to whether he was even going to turn up. He did turn up. but he's not so far taken the opportunity to make his way to the president and have a word with him, possibly waiting for a more formal moment later in the day.
Yeah, and this is exactly the point, isn't it, Dominic, that we were talking about, the idea that President Biden, very careful in his words, stuck to the script in the main during his speech, did veer off with some interesting anecdotes about his Britishness, his Englishness, but this is the moment now when speaking to those political leaders, the decision makers, where the sort of those relationships can be formed, strengthened, or perhaps if you don't speak to the other side, there can be a little damage perhaps caused.
Well, I guess as the DUP leader has not made himself available yet to the president, any sort of jeopardy that might be an encounter between the two is so far avoided. But I guess he might be waiting for a moment later in the day when he could meet him. And it does look like there's some kind of sort of process of people lining up to try and have a word with the president. It's certainly fairly unusual. It's more like the end of the State of the Union address in America, where the president gives his address, his annual address,
show
and
us the
then
protest.
Sort of joins a melee, a mingling with Congress people and American politicians. It feels more like that. It feels informal. We'll have to see later whether there's something more formal, more one-on-one meetings with the different party leaders.
Yeah, we've got a shot there of former Congressman Joe Kennedy III, the US economic envoy to Northern Ireland, and President Biden making it clear in his speech as well there, Dr. Rice, that Mr. Kennedy is going to be coming back to Northern Ireland, leading a trade delegation in the coming months.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the really significant aspect here is it almost feels like a sideshow to Joe Kennedy visiting Northern Ireland. It seems to an extent the President Biden's role is to almost promote the fact that he's here to really generate the thinking and the dialogue around the opportunities that this relationship could bring, and really to set the stage for him to be able to take his plans forward in terms of developing those investment opportunities. So quite ironically, we'll have a bit of a flip. Normally it's the diplomats that come with the President that are the sideshow, but I think it's possibly the other way around, particularly with this Northern Ireland aspect of President Biden's visit.
Dominic, just a thought on the speech and some of the rhetoric that was used. He quoted a couple of poets, didn't he? Talked, I think was it Morrissey that he quoted as well, talking about
the national tribes have the right to approve
the
all
darkness and
taxation,
the outside being technicolor. This idea of hope, renewal, reclaiming the peace. I mean, he certainly went there in his language in attempts to kind of raise the sort of feeling that, this is all for you now. This future is yours, and you can seize it and make the most of it when you can.
Yeah, the theme was about youth. A lot of the theme was once he'd moved on from America's
these people in the background are waiting for the bus. So you've got 8
and
people waiting for the president here.
Given the agreement, an agreement that America really regards as one of its great foreign policy achievements, diplomatic achievements of recent times. Once he'd moved on from that, and he kind of, I think, invoked the spirit of 25 years ago to then renew America's commitments to the agreement, but also to the peace and stability of Northern Ireland, but also to the people, and particularly the youth of Northern Ireland. And he said there's so much energy and dynamism here, so much entrepreneurial spirit, and there's so much more that can be unleashed here from that spirit if the right political environment is created, and if the full promise of the Good Friday Agreement is fully realised. And then he said, as you say, he then used the poetry of the poet he was quoting to say, this place is transformed by peace. It's made technicolor by peace, and pledged American support to support that.
Okay, well, Dominic, just before President Biden got up to speech, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had something to say about his meeting with President Biden and ahead of the President's remarks. Let's listen to that.
You know, it was great to welcome President Biden to the UK for, I think, the 4th time since he's become president, but particularly to a part of the UK that is very special and dear to him. It also reminds us of the contribution that America made to the peace process as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. And President Biden and I spoke a lot about that, and we spoke in particular about the incredible economic opportunities that are there in store for Northern Ireland. And we talked about the investment potential that is there, the companies that want to invest in Northern Ireland. I think that's incredibly exciting. It will bring growth, jobs and prosperity to Northern Ireland, and I know he shares my ambition to see the institutions here back up and running. That's what people and businesses in Northern Ireland deserve.
Now, you're the British Prime Minister. Why aren't we seeing more of you and him standing together, speaking together? You're even going to his speech. Has this trip really been worth it for you?
Well, it's the 4th time that President Biden has visited the UK since he's become president, and he and I had a very good discussion today about a range of issues: economic investment in Northern Ireland, but also a range of foreign policy issues, the importance of economic security. And that comes on the back of a meeting I had with him last month in the US. I'm seeing him again next month at the G7, and then I'm going to Washington in June. That we're very close partners and allies. We cooperate and talk on a range of things, whether that's supporting Ukraine or, as I said, economic security. I think actually the relationship is in great shape, and the President and I have lots that we're working on together.
Now, junior doctors are on strike for many days. There are reports that ministers might be willing to get round the table if the junior doctors drop their demand from a 35% pay rise to something more like...
Don't care about doctors. Cares about the the BBC stream showing. The BBC is fact-checking his speech. Has Northern Ireland's GDP really doubled since 1998? Only if you include inflation, otherwise it didn't. Like, the Northern Irish economy is pretty shit, and I think that's down to our incompetent local government, the local devolved administration here. They're all pretty left-wing economically, even like unionists are pretty left-wing economically. It's all state-led, it's all state-directed economic development here. Had we a bit more free enterprising, cutting back on regulation, devolving of certain taxes to Northern Ireland, and then that tax power being utilised in a more entrepreneurial and free marketeering way, then yeah, maybe Northern Ireland could have its own little sort of economic boom. But the problem is, like, Northern Irish population is, they're the same kind of people who like worship the NHS, and they think the big business, well, yeah, big business is bad, but if you own a factory or like a medium-sized enterprise, you need to pay tax to pay the NHS, and then you've got local government, local parties here. The DUP, not the best on economics. Then you've got Sinn Féin, which are like fucking weird socialists. Then you've got the SDLP and the Alliance Party, who want to bring up taxes to pay for refugees and troons. So yeah, the Northern Irish economy is kind of doomed to eternal stagnation. What is he leaving?
5 priorities I set out, and that's what I'm going to focus on doing.
So he didn't speak to Doug Beattie or the DUP. That's not going to go down well. He spoke to the nationalist parties, but he didn't speak to any of the unionist ones.
International onto Air Force One, and then down to the Republic of Ireland. Let's bring in our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, who was putting the questions there to the Prime Minister. Wide-ranging interview, Sam. Plenty of topics to discuss. You started off there by asking him about that chat he had with President Biden.
That's right. Always in slightly odd occasions, those, because there's a lot going on domestically for Rishi Sunak. Yet he has chosen to come over to Belfast last night and today to be here while the US president is on UK soil. Clearly, the US haven't decided not to make a great deal of that. You couldn't see him when he was on the tarmac greeting President Biden last night, and there's no sort of joint moment with the two addressing the people of Northern Ireland with addressing the people of the United Kingdom. So a sort of muted reception. Rishi Sunak, in his broadcast interview just now, trying to put a sort of brave-faced, positive spin on it, talking about what he was discussing with President Biden in what was termed this bilateral coffee, which I think is diplomatic speak for not a completely full, wide-ranging chat, something a little bit shorter,
massive crowd
and less
over
important
there.
than that. I think
completely outnumbered
there's a feeling
by the
probably in the White House both
Very
that they want the focus of this trip to be
is.
the Republic of Ireland, and also I think that there's a sense that the president's likely to be on a state visit in the next couple of months to the UK. So this isn't Rishi Sunak's day. But what Rishi Sunak was making clear was that the two of them talked about the talked about the future economic opportunities for Northern Ireland, the investment that's possible for both of those. And in the last few seconds, we've got something of a sense from Downing Street about a bit more detail about what that conversation will have involved. There's a statement from Number 10 about the Biden-Sunak meeting, and it says that the Prime Minister thanked President Biden for the role the US people and businesses have played in Northern Ireland's prosperity, with billions of pounds of investment creating tens of thousands of jobs. And both of them expressed sincere hope that the institutions in Northern Ireland are restored as soon as possible, and discussed the wider relationship between the UK and the US, and also went on to talk about some of the other things that they talked about outside of directly to do with Northern Ireland.
I'm trying to listen and see what these people are chanting in the background, but I can't quite make it out.
Rishi Sunak is doing politics on the globe stage differently from all of his predecessors over the last 10 years. There's been a lot of confrontation, whether it was Boris Johnson, whether it was Theresa May even, or Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak, I think, is somebody that the Americans feel that they can do business with, and I think that him standing side by side with President Biden is a concerted attempt to demonstrate that as much as anything back home.
Absolutely. Okay, Sam, do appreciate that for now. Thank you. For the moment, I just want to bring you a little news that's come into us while we've been talking here, and following on from President Biden's speech. The leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Jeffrey Donaldson, has said in the last few minutes that President Biden's visit has not changed the political dynamic here in Northern Ireland. Of course, power sharing has been suspended over the Brexit situation, and the DUP have voted against the Windsor Framework. Let's bring in the DUP MP, Jim Shannon, who is joining us now live. And Mr. Shannon, good to have you with us. So, look, Jeffrey Donaldson says that what Biden has said has not changed the dynamic, not changed the feeling. The DUP aren't about to get back into power sharing.
Well, I think the first thing is that we do welcome the President to Northern Ireland. It's very good that he's taken the time to come and visit us, and he is the most important, influential leader in the whole of the Western world. So we recognise his position. But yes, it would have been better, and our leader Jeffrey is right, it would have been better if perhaps he'd have come with some encouragement, for instance, and how we could move the dynamic forward. The clear obstacle to all this, of course, is that unionism, and that's a large proportion of the electorate in Northern Ireland, have not had the involvement in the process and the way forward to find a solution. So maybe President Biden could have perhaps found a way to encourage the United Kingdom government, and the Prime Minister in particular, to try and find a solution that involves a large part of the population of Northern Ireland that aren't part of this process so far.
Mr. Shannon, you say you would have liked if you'd have come here with some idea of the way to move forward, but at the same time, some of your colleagues are saying they don't want him to come here and lecture. Sammy Wilson describing him as obviously anti-British, and they didn't want him to come here and think that he could force you, cajole you into getting back into power sharing.
Well, I think, to be fair, I think those comments are not absolute opposites. I think the fact of the matter is, if he had come with some ideas, or perhaps that might have been.
That was Stephen Farry, my local MP. What a fucking hard that man is. I'm just looking through Twitter to see if I can find something particular interest to bring up. Cringe whenever I hear a culture accent, trying to avoid. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, short flight from West International. Instagram. There's a no to NATO thing that's been put up on the hill. That's what Irish Republicans do every now and again. That's their protest. Trying to find out stuff to see if there's any first. Yep.
Those ideas that you'd like to have
a
heard
little Bengali.
Well, I mean, economic links are important, and we recognise the economic links and how important it is that we can build upon those. And I believe we will. And I think that Joe Kennedy will be an individual on behalf of the United States government that will do just that. But the issue and the question is to ask, if we're going to find a way forward in the political process, then Northern Ireland's constitutional place within the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is not solidified within the Windsor framework. We've asked for that to be clarified. We've asked for that to be legislated upon at Westminster. Those are one of the requests we put to the Prime Minister, along with other requests, of which there are a myriad number. There's lots of issues that are still outstanding in the Windsor framework. There's the medications for animals. There's the movement of stock to the cattle sales in Stirling and also in Northern England as well. There's also the issue of the fishermen. There's outstanding issues for all the fishing sector, which are yet to be addressed and sorted. He's told us he's going to do that. He hasn't done that. European Court of Justice issues still outstanding. These are key issues. The constitutional position is a key issue. We need some movement, and we need our Prime Minister to use all his influence to make that happen. And if the President, in his visit,
sorry, Mr. Shannon, sorry. Yeah, just sorry to interrupt, but I do want to pick you up on that point. In what way does the Windsor Framework not guarantee the Northern Ireland's place in the Union?
Well, I mean, the Windsor Framework, by its very nature, does not give the Northern Ireland Assembly the power that it should. For instance, we've taken legal opinion on what the storm and break means. In other words, of European legislation which is contrary and different from the United Kingdom is coming through. We've been told that by the Prime Minister that storm and break that it will be one that we can use, but we've taken legal opinion that says no, it can't.
Jim, you don't speak very well.
That says that it can't.
Not that I can
the Friends of the Union
have
taken legal opinion and says that it can't, and it doesn't give us the legal constitutional strength that we need. And also there's the Orange Order, the Loyalist Coalition as well. They've all taken different legal opinion, but all come out with the same result. So the storm outbreak, in actual fact, it seems to us, legally, it doesn't have any power whatsoever. So our constitutional position is weakened because Europe has a bigger say in Northern Ireland and what the United Kingdom has. If that's the case, and it seems to be the case legally, then we've got a big problem.
Mr. Shannon, I do take that, but as you have laid out there many times, legal opinion. Wouldn't there have been an alternative? Couldn't you have gone in to power sharing, accepted the Windsor Framework, and then worked out how the storm outbreak actually operates in practice?
Well, that would be an option.
BBC is leading.
But the fact is that we
just deleted
have
the
a
post.
mandate. We fought the election in May of last year.
They deleted it?
We have a very, very clear mandate. We have an obligation, and I believe an obligation that we will deliver and be honest with our people with.
No, they made it the header.
They told us that they
this is what the BBC is leading.
The Windsor Framework doesn't
naturally, they had to shoe in the two diverse women, upstanding women of colour, onto the header page.
Go back into
of course, the BBC had to do that.
Or be involved in the restart of government in Northern Ireland. If the key issue of the election that we fought
black
is
woman, an
that
Indian woman, and a literal.
Just
I don't want to be mean, but
to move forward.
A Down syndrome man as well.
And go
an Indian woman, a black woman, an American pedophile, and a man with Down syndrome. The great representation of the community there, BBC.
And I wonder how you're feeling ahead of those local elections on May the 18th. There are some concerns that you could lose votes to the TUV, a more hardline unionist party. How are you going to keep your constituency together with power sharing not in place?
Black man's pissing me off.
Well, I mean,
I was just about to go to the BBC, but the BBC's just brought on the I'll show you it, but I'm not going to put on her voice. This ham planet, this abomination, this fat whale. Look, she is so disgustingly fat. The fat is physically pushed out the pores of her skin on her cheeks. You know what I mean? Like, you know the way a pore is like a little indent that goes into your body? She's so fat, the fat has pushed the pore outwards. They're like inverted pores because she is so fat and disgusting. This is a woman called Naomi Long. She's the one who leads the pro-diversity. Northern Ireland needs refugees, it needs more gay people, it needs more transgender rights. She leads Lap Party, and you can see why, because she is just so disgustingly fat. Look at those jowls, those fat. Look at these big piggy fingers. That's what she is. She's the liberal, the voice of the liberal Ulster. Liberal Northern Ireland is represented by this abomination. So look at this fat indent there. There's a lot of discussion that there is a number of pizza places up in Ballyhackamore are sustained purely just off of her costume. Just look at these big fat pig hoofs. Look at them. They're not fingers. Notice how they, while she's gesturing with her hand, her fingers don't physically come apart. They're stuck together like a pig hoof. So she can just stick her pig hoof right in the trough. The estrogen HRT laced trough, the gravy trough of politics. She just sticks her pig hoof right in there, just scoops it out and right into her gullet. What a disgusting. I hate her so much. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of Naomi Long or the Alliance Party, which is the party of diversity that she leads. So what are we seeing here?
Have been farcical, and I think
That's
the reality
her
of not
voice
having
now.
a functioning assembly, not being able to go in there and deal with all the really pressing issues, but then turn up for an event like this, I think would be totally inappropriate. I think this was the right event. I also think the fact that it was somewhere that is focused on the economy, on young people and the future was the right tone for.
Whenever she talks about the future, she unironically has said in numerous like election debates and in her party literature, like the future of Northern Ireland is like refugees, it is gay rights, it is diversity and tolerance. That's unironically, she is stereotype of that kind of politics, and I'm sure. Oh, here we go. Here's the man here. Right, we don't need to talk about the ham beast. This is Sammy Wilson, leader of the DUP.
It was a very brief discussion, and in fairness to the President, he made clear that he's not here to interfere, that it is for the political leaders in Northern Ireland to make decisions about the future, but that the United States stands ready to help in whatever way they can, particularly in relation to encouraging more American investment and jobs created in Northern Ireland.
Stay with us a second, Sir Geoffrey, because I understand the presidential motorcade is now leaving University of Ulster here. We now know that it's heading back towards the airport again because Joe Biden is going to catch a flight to Dublin, because this is the one part of his Northern Ireland visit, albeit a very short visit, it has to be said, and he's now making his way to the airport to go to Dublin to continue on with the rest of his 4-day trip. Did you get a sense from him that he feels you need to do more here?
No, I didn't get that in his speech at all. I think, in fairness to the President, he made clear it is for the political leaders in Northern Ireland to make the key decisions. And of course, like all of us, he wants to see the political institutions up and running again. But we are very clear that can only happen when we've got the solid foundations that we need to rebuild cross-community consensus. Northern Ireland only works when unionists and nationalists are in agreement and when we have our politics in alignment with the need for that cross-community consensus, and that's what we need to rebuild.
Do you not feel any sense of extra pressure here today, because you're the man holding up things, you're the man holding up democracy, as President Biden put it, and the importance of getting it back so we can build on those economic foundations which are now in place? A lot of that was directed at you.
I don't feel under any pressure here, and because in the end we will make our decisions. based on what we see and what we hear. We will be going back to the government following our extensive consultation. We've got our report now, and we'll be going back with our proposals to the government. Hopefully we can make progress in resolving the outstanding issues so that we can rebuild that cross-community consensus and that unionists once again can support the restoration of the political institutions in Northern Ireland. That's what we want to see.
Some of your party members have had a lot to say about President Biden over the course of the past few days. Sammy Wilson, for instance, described him as anti-British. Arlene Foster, the former First Minister, former party leader, had some choice words to say about him as well. The fact that he was very much pro-nationalist and very much anti-UK. Is that your assessment?
Well, I welcome the President's reference today to the contribution, the enormous contribution that the Ulster Scots made to the foundation and building of the United States of America. And he also made reference to his own British heritage, his ancestry in England, and including his link with the French Huguenots, of course, who were Protestants fleeing persecution from France. So I think that he recognised the need to bring balance to what he had to say, and I think we got today from the President something that was more balanced and more reflective of the relationship between Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom and the United States of America.
So you don't necessarily agree with Sammy Wilson or Arlene Foster and their assessment of Joe Biden?
Well, I think there are things the President said in the past that were unhelpful. I think he knows that, and I welcome the fact that today he sought to rebalance and reframe some of those previous remarks, recognising the strong connections between the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland, and the United States of America.
Many people today have described this visit very much as a missed opportunity. The fact that President Biden only one public engagement lasting a little over an hour in Northern Ireland, and the feeling is that had the institutions been up and running, that perhaps President Biden would have went to Stormont, would have maybe addressed MLAs in the chamber, maybe one or two other engagements as well, but that didn't happen because your party's boycotting the executive.
Well, I don't think that would have changed the political dynamic, and in the end we need a solution. That's what we're working towards. And the solution won't be found in speeches made at Stormont. It will be found in the hard graft and the hard yards that we need to undertake to get this right. And that's what I'm determined to do, to get it right. And I will continue for as long as it takes to get the foundations, the strong foundations that Northern Ireland needs to move forward together as part of the United Kingdom.
And where is that process at right now? Because a lot of people looking from the outside looking in will say, well, there's an internal process within the DUP that's now run its course. There's engagement, we're told, between...
While we that Peter on for a bit, Jeffrey Donaldson out of way, let's have a look. This is what Trump has said. I know it's from Leo Kirsten. Some of you don't like Leo, but...
Who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline?
I don't want to get our country in trouble, so I won't answer it. But I can tell you who it wasn't, was Russia. How about when they blamed Russia? You know, they said Russia blew up their own pipeline. You got a kick out of that one, too. It wasn't Russia.
Who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline?
Trump is going pretty in hard on that. Pretty unequivocal Trump's view on that. So that was something that's come out just while I was on this stream. So
that we get the progress that we need to recognise and protect Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom and our ability to trade with the rest of the UK. That's what is very important to build future prosperity for everyone in Northern Ireland.
So Jeffrey Donaldson, thank you very much indeed for your time today. So there you have it, Tara, the thoughts of Sir Jeffrey Donaldson, the DUP leader, after his meeting today with President Biden and after listening to President Biden on the platform behind us.
And thanks very much indeed. Well, let's just update you now on what the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been doing in the meantime. He greeted President Biden, of course, when he arrived last night. And this morning, the two men held a short meeting. But before that, the Prime Minister met 6-year-old Dahi McGowan, who has, of course, been the inspiration for our new opt-out organ donation legislation, which has, of course, become known as Dahi's Law. Rishi Sunak presented Dahi, who's waiting on a heart transplant, with a Points of Light award, which recognises people who do something remarkable for others. The award also said the whole country is with you while you continue your treatment. Well, there's been speculation of strained relations between the UK and US over this visit, notably that the Prime Minister wasn't at the speech at Ulster University, but the President did meet the Prime Minister privately, and Mr Sunak spoke afterwards to Sky News Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates.
You know, it was great to welcome President Biden to the UK for I think the fourth time since he's become
so,
president. But particularly
I think
to
with
a part
that,
of the UK that is very special.
that's kind of it. Just before you guys shoot off, I would appreciate it. I've set up a link tree. I'd appreciate it if you guys in chat wouldn't mind go checking that out. It's linked as well in the description to the video. I'm hoping. Let me know what you think about it. I did it earlier on and it seemed to work then. But if you click on some of the links, if any of them don't work, let me know. Let me know if it could look a bit better, whatever. I'm using. Hopefully the link tree is going to cut down on me having to put up like 20 different links to various things in my videos and in chat. So let me know how that goes. In fact, I'll bring up the link tree just to show you. So that's the link tree. That's what it should look like. Appreciate if some of you guys click on the link that I've put in the chat or below the video. Let me know if it works okay. It's my first time using that, but with that, I don't know what time he's due to address the Dáil. I don't even know if it's today. I'm in two minds if I might stream that. I am kind of aware this is sort of way off topic from the usual stuff I cover, Ukraine and Russia stuff. And this is more like a personal pet peeve of mine, but I thought, hey, look, if the pedophiles in Northern Ireland, I might as well do something to get content out of it. So that's that. I might, like I say, I'm in two minds about it. Don't know what time it's due to happen, but I might stream his address to the Dáil if it is on public. I'm sure it would be on public viewing, but I don't know if that's today or tomorrow. But saying that, I've been working on a couple of things behind the lines. I'm trying to teach myself on entropy. Not too sure quite how that all works, but I'm playing about with entropy at the moment. So I'm thinking I might do a gaming stream at some point this week just to test that out. Might play Hell Let Loose or something like that. Nothing too serious, just to test that and see how that goes. And I'm looking at doing another update stream. Maybe Friday, maybe Saturday. Who keeps messaging me? Maybe Friday, maybe Saturday. Look at the photo of the BBC. Yeah. So someone's just messaged me. Remember earlier on, whenever I brought up the picture that the BBC used of the woman, like the Indian girl, the black girl, Joe Biden, and then the Down syndrome actor, someone's messaged me just to point out that, yeah, look what the BBC used. Like, yeah, I talked about it on stream. So it's not just me who's racist and ableist. I'm not the only person who noticed that stuff. So yeah, it's a it's a common theme. But like I say, gaming stream maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after that. But I'm looking at doing a regular stream probably Saturday. Just a general update on Russia Ukraine, and I might do another gaming stream, but I might open it up to like a community thing where if people have the game and they want to come on and play with me, I might do that on Saturday. I might make that a sort of regular Saturday thing, not a Saturday, Sunday thing, and sort of test how that goes. But like I say, that also need to actually pull my finger out and finish off editing the Israeli interview into its own standalone video, and then work on the other interviews that I've done into their own videos. That's something that's still going on behind the scenes. And I'm also slowly but surely plugging away at the tank video that I was talking about a while ago. So with that, we'll just have a quick last look at what the Sky News is saying.
the next generation in Northern Ireland. We were talking this morning about the possibility that a young person would introduce the president. That's exactly what happened. I've also spoken to that young person in the last few minutes, Gabrielle Feenan, and she's described as a young entrepreneur, a Good Friday Agreement baby. She was born just a year after the historic compromise. She said she believes in her generation and their ability to finish the task of peacemaking. In terms of Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, and he's the person we really need to hear from today, he also met with the president. He said the president is always very welcome in Northern Ireland, as is any visitor. So clearly moving away from some of the more disparaging comments we heard from other members of the DUP today. But he said ultimately he welcomes the president's commitment to economic investment, but encourages people to recognise that the biggest source of investment in the economy here is in the GB market, and that's why he believes there are still difficulties in terms of the post-Brexit trading arrangements, and is echoing the President's call for the British government and the EU to address those concerns to the satisfaction of all sides in a bid to see the power-sharing government restored.
And Sam, addressing those concerns is going to be the difficult bit, isn't it? Because, you know, Rishi Sunak made huge play of the fact that when he came back from speaking with Ursula von der Leyen with the Windsor framework, this is it, this is the deal, and this is the one we have to work with.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, Rishi Sunak's premiership has been in some ways transformed by the Windsor framework. I don't think it's overstating it to say it wasn't going particularly well until that point 6 to 8 weeks ago.
So this is all getting into very technical stuff. Like I say, this is sort of well out of the realms of the stuff that you guys come to me to watch. I know it's usually about Russia, Ukraine, but this is sort of me spurging out about a local thing. Just to sort of rehash it for people who aren't really invested in this, and I don't blame you, I barely follow Northern Irish politics, and I'm unfortunately here for the time being. So as a part of Brexit, because Northern Ireland is obviously connected to the Irish Republic with a land border, the Irish Republic is part of the EU. There was a lot of confusion about just how a post-EU United Kingdom could square that. The Good Friday Agreement treaty all sort of came in and complicated it. So the way that the British government ended up fudging it under immense pressure from the EU and the United States was, in terms of trade, is that instead of putting up new trade barriers and checks on the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, which would just pretty much be unfeasible, and even I don't think that should have happened, is that instead they decided to put the trade border in the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, which is obviously a big no-no because Great Britain and Northern Ireland are the same country. This is an internal trade border. I can understand why they did it, like, because it's easier to do that, but it throws up a lot of constitutional problems. So the problem there is that you've got an internal border that has effectively made Northern Ireland detached to a degree from the rest of the United Kingdom. Obviously, unionists, and I would consider myself a unionist, this is abhorrent to us. Our identity is very much British, so to weaken that identity, especially in an economic sense, whenever most of our trade, our services, our goods are sold, or we import them from Great Britain, is a big no-no. The DUP and unionist parties have pushed back on this, and the DUP has kind of walked out of government, and because we have mandatory coalition because of the Good Friday Agreement and the conflict that was here, that has meant that the devolved administration here just can't function. So there is a big negotiation process the past few months with the EU to bring up to try and rectify this. This is what they mean whenever they're talking about the Windsor framework. It's kind of a fudge. It's not really a good solution. It's part of the way there, but there's still more that needs to go before it can be acceptable to someone like me and unionists. It kind of mitigates it. It says that there's like a 2-track lane. Like if there's stuff from Great Britain going to Northern Ireland, that shouldn't need to have paperwork or checks. But if there's stuff from Northern Ireland, say, going to like Ireland, it might need to be checked. Or if it's going on to the EU market, it's all very complex trade and economic laws and trade laws and all that kind of stuff. It gets very dry. But that's kind of the big contention here. So that's the reason why our devolved administration isn't up and running at the moment. So that's sort of the quick rundown there. So like I say, with that, probably going to wrap it up here. So I might I don't know if it's today or if it's tomorrow, so we'll have to wait and see. But I might stream his address to the Doyle, although I'll probably get very pissed off at that. So I'm not too sure about that at the moment. But touch wood, we'll play it by ear. With that, I'm going to do a gaming stream the next couple of days to test out entropy and see how that works. And then I'll do a regular update stream, maybe on Friday, but if not Friday, certainly on Saturday. And then I might do like a community stream, like set up a regular gaming thing on Sundays. I might test that out this Sunday and see how it goes. So with that, I'll throw the link again into the chat. For people who weren't here, I've set up a link tree. Just posted it in chat. Hey Mutiny, I hope you're well. I've set up a link tree. If you guys could just check that out and see if all the links work okay, that would be great. I've never used Linktree before, so I'm hoping this is a way to kind of condense the like 20 links that I have to put in my video descriptions and chats and stuff into one manageable, easy to compile link. So, oh, pardon me. With that, Sleepy Joe is leaving Northern Ireland. Hopefully he's taking his crackhead son with him. Very short trip, mercifully short, and it didn't seem to go down very well. But other than that, a bit of a sidetrack. We'll get back to regular Russian-Ukraine streaming in days to come. So with that, thanks for coming, guys. Hope it was a bit informative, and have a great day, and speak to you all soon. Bye.